I'm Dr. Jay Peacock, Professor of History at Nash Community College, and this is History 132, American History 2. The period from the end of World War II until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 is often referred to as the era of the Cold War. In many respects, it was a third world war because it involved a global struggle for dominance between the United States and the Soviet Union. Although there were a few hot flare-ups, most notably in Korea in the early 1950s and in Vietnam in the late 1960s and early 1970s, the war was cold because it did not involve a direct military confrontation between the two superpowers. Although most Americans went about their daily lives not thinking much about the international situation, the Cold War was never far from their thoughts, especially in the 1950s and 1960s. The threat of the Cold War turning hot raised the nightmarish possibility of nuclear annihilation. Especially in the 50s and 60s, many Americans built fallout shelters in their backyards, and school children held duck and cover drills. And the Cold War affected almost all aspects of American life and popular culture, including literature, art, music, and TV and film. Cold War tensions eased somewhat during the era of détente in the 1970s, then ratcheted up again in the early 1980s. Then a series of stunning developments during the presidential administrations of Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush in the mid to late 80s led to the winding down of the Cold War in the early 1990s. Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev reached a series of agreements that significantly reduced nuclear weapons and nuclear tension. Then, beginning in 1989, communism began to unravel in Eastern Europe. On November 9, 1989, the main symbol of the Cold War, the Berlin Wall, began to come down. Within the next couple of years, all of Eastern Europe had overthrown communism. Germany, a divided country since the end of World War II, was reunited. And at the end of 1991, the Soviet Union itself collapsed. One writer even called the end of the Cold War the end of history. Perhaps not, but if the Cold War is defined as the global struggle for dominance between the United States and its capitalist allies, and the Soviet Union and its communist allies, then the U.S. clearly won. Along the way, though, the United States got itself into some trouble, most notably in Vietnam.
I kissed you. Oh yeah, you don't realize what you do to me, and I didn't realize what a kiss could be. You got a way about you. Now I can't live without you. Never knew what I missed till I kissed you. I kissed you.